Welcome back to another edition of the Body Beauty Show. Today I am joined by Mina-Jacqueline Au and I'm admittedly a little nervous to say your business name, practice name. I feel as if I'm going to butcher it because it is French, I believe. So I'll take a stab here, but do come and save me and throw me an arm floaty and pronounce it correctly. Lueur MD Aesthetics in Tenafly, New Jersey. How did I do in the pronunciation?
Fantastic. You actually got it perfectly.
I did. Excited.
Yes,
right on.
You pronounced it 100% perfectly.
Awesome. Well, I'm excited to have you on, Mina.
How did you know
that? I took a guess. I have a Hooked on Phonics workbook from when I was 6 minutes old, and I've never read it, but it's close enough that I absorb it through osmosis. I just took a guess.
There you go. Look, it helped you in life.
There we go. There we go. Well, hey, so listeners, Mina is the embodiment of what I believe Dostoevsky was alluding to when he wrote the literary masterpiece, The Idiots, which is to say, beauty will save us. And that's the quote from the book that is The Idiot, which is hilariously named. It's a fantastic piece of literature. But Mina is one of the individuals that is literally, I believe, saving the world. And the quote again from the text is, beauty will save the world. So, Mina, after that intro, I think where we should start is a little bit of setup here, because one of the reasons why I'm fascinated with you, of the many reasons, is that you are a contrarian. So, to set the stage a bit here, I think a quote from Earl Nightingale is apt. So, here's the quote: "Watch what everyone else does, then do the opposite. The majority is always wrong." Now, in reading your bio, it is extremely clear that you are a contrarian and contrarians make history. So that being the setup, with the theme being today, exploring and unpacking the differences between Europeans and Americans and their view of aesthetics, technology, how we use it, et cetera, I figured that would be a good anchor to get this started. So that out of the way, preamble out of the way, an hour deep into my monologue here. Where would you like to start today's discussion?
Well, first of all, thank you so much. I think you're being too nice, too kind. But, it is my passion to really kind of think outside the box. It's how I've always been. I don't have the background of your normal medical doctors and practitioners. But I end up in the medicine world, medical community. I see patients, I treat patients, and put it this way, I come in with a little bit of a different perspective. And not necessarily, it's not like I woke up one day and say, let me just think outside the box. I think in America, a lot of practitioners are, they're very amazing, great doctors. This is why overseas, a lot of times, unfortunately, when people have cancer or some sort of major issues, right away, they say, let's go to America. Let's get treated there. But the thing is, one thing that people don't recognize and don't realize is that doctors are cultured in med school in a very strict formula, in a formulation to a point that once out of med school, there's no other way. They follow the formula, and it's great. It's fantastic. It makes benchmarks in the medical community, and it advances us in every parts of medicine, whether it's aesthetics or oncology. However, there's so much outside of it. And one of the things about me, and I guess what we're really going to talk about, is what people do in other parts of the world and the advancement that other parts of the world is making that we don't know about. And because we don't know about it, practices here they're not maximizing what they could do with patients, whether it's in aesthetics medicine, dermatology, oncology, anything else. So, that's actually one of my passion. I'm constantly learning. I am seeking to speak with colleagues of mine that are overseas, trying to get new formulation, combined therapies, whether it's, again, on skin restoration or infusion therapies that I do, and things along that line.
So exploring the differences, is there, maybe I'll put a scaffolding around this to ease into this, because admittedly, I do not know a ton in terms of the differences between the two aggregate culture sets, let's say
Mm-hmm.
Americans and Europeans.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, if we chunk this up into perhaps, let's say, I don't know, the first primary difference that stems to mind, because it's very clear to your point that I think the American system is suffering from a couple of issues. The first is that steeping that you mentioned. You know, MDs they're just steeped in this is the way. And I don't know if they're taught like this is the only way, but whether that is the case or not, that's how they tend to operate, it seems. Pun not intended. uh, but where would you say the primary differences as a starting point as we explore the two cultures on the aggregate? Are there any things or what things rather jump out as being the big differences? Maybe it's machine perspective, maybe it's practice perspective. What jumps to mind?
I think it all stems from one thing, and that is resources.
Mm.
So, if I'm talking with a blackboard behind me, I would be drawing a little chart with, little kind of like an octopus chart with, fingers coming out. It all stems from the middle, one thing. And that is the resources that's provided to whether it's doctors or a med student. And that thing in the middle, the resource, is what FDA approvals are. Some
Oh,
may disagree with me. Um, it is what it is. I mean, the truth of the matter is the FDA regulates certain things. They don't regulate certain things here for certain reasons. There's many different controversial ideas on why they don't regulate certain things, why they don't approve certain things. I have my idea about it. Everybody has, their own philosophy on why. The truth is, at the end of the day, and I'll give you a great example, are vitamins, vitamin C's, vitamin D. Everybody knows about vitamin. FDA does not regulate it. So if you go to Whole Foods and you go to the vitamin aisle, tons and tons of vitamin, there's not one that will say it's FDA approved. Okay. But we know vitamins work. Because why? Because look, when you're pregnant, a doctor is going to tell you to go take prenatal vitamins. When you're a little kid, a doctor is going to say you need to take this kind of vitamin until your age X. Vitamins, something that are essentials to our body. As a matter of fact, my practical things that I always promote is that wellness before illness. Why do I have to see you when you're sick? I need to see you so I can prevent you from being sick. As a matter of fact, my partner and I would always laugh. We're in the wrong business because people make businesses make their money off of people being sick. And we try to prevent people from being sick so they don't come back. It's the same thing. We do a lot of skin restoration. So we're not dermatologists. We work with dermatologists. So when we see something that are suspicious, we'll refer them out to dermatologists. However, basic skin conditions or, even something as simple as anti-aging, people come and see us. And instead of saying, okay, you have a fine line here, let's put Botox there, which we do, we take a little deeper dive. We spend a little more time and explain to them, why are you having this? Why are you having fine lines? Why are you having pigmentation? Is this pigmentation from the sun? Or is this from aging? Or is this from inflammation? So all of that is from the root, and we treat the root cause of the issue. So then what's going to happen? Their skin get restored. We never see them again. So my partner and I are like, okay, I think we're not doing the right thing, but we are doing the right thing. So again, that comes from the very basic on the why. Treat, wellness before illness. Now, in Europe, the EU FDA actually does regulate vitamin. And when they regulate vitamin, that means the government's heavily involved in it. Now, what does that also mean? It also means when a doctor wants to run certain studies on vitamins, and vitamin is actually very powerful. As harmless as it sounds, it can do a lot. In Europe, when people were having COVID, besides hydroxychloroquine that we were using, they were also treating patients in the ICU with vitamin C, pure vitamin C infusions. Okay, now why are we not doing that here? There's no FDA regulation. Doctors don't know what to do with it. Am I supposed to put in 10 grams, 50 grams, 500 grams? Am I infusing once a day? No idea. It's as if I were to tell you to do it. No idea at all. There's no studies being done. Whereas now in Europe, because has always been regulations of vitamin, there have been so many studies being done, just like pharmaceutical things, that right away as something happens, a pandemic happens, or there's a new cancer study, vitamins is part of treatment. Now, we're not saying this is not alternative therapy. Nobody's saying that, okay, we're going to forego chemo and just use vitamin, but vitamin always go hand in hand. It is very powerful. It can be medicinal, as much as the fact that, it's not going to do you harm. I can infuse you with C. It's not going to do you any harm. As a matter of fact, even if a practitioner doesn't know what they're doing, they infuse you too much C, you're just going to go to the bathroom and pee it out. So it's very harmless, but it can do a lot. And that's where the basic comes from. Because the doctors are getting money and funding to run studies, now they're doing so much more in terms of treatment protocol. Now, same thing with devices. Now, of course, we're not going to put vitamin in a machine like cryoskin, but because there's so much of a broader knowledge on aesthetics medicine in general, devices that are being invented and engineered in Europe are very different than devices that are engineered here in the US. In Europe, what I've been seeing as a trend is that they'll invent a device and they will say, okay, this is the beta version. These are the things that are not looking good. Next year, instead of coming out with a new device to compete with other companies, they will take that one device, re-engineer it, make it better, 2.0. From 2.0, they'll do the same thing the following year, 3.0. They'll re-engineer it to the point that it almost comes to perfection at some point. Whereas in the US, and this is me including, everybody I know is in the mentalities now, latest and greatest, what's next, what's next. So companies like laser devices are always inventing new devices instead of going back to the old one. They might take aspects of old ones to combine with new ones. And I'm not saying they're not good. They're great. I mean, we have some of the best devices that you could get in the US, but it's just a very different mentality. And therefore it affects the treatment of a patient, whether again, it's in fat loss, skin restoration, or medical treatments.
So to encapsulate that in the latter bit of that, because the vitamins and the rest of that is beyond my circle of competency. With devices, it sounds like the primary difference culturally is that Americans live in the age of TikTok, where we can stomach a 6 minute, yeah, right, 6 seconds, actually Vine are the 6-second videos. And we want things yesterday. We want it now. I'm in Starbucks. Why is my latte 142 degrees? I wanted 141 and I wanted it in 37 seconds. And it took 38. And they're upset and they're livid. Europeans. Yeah. And Europeans are absolutely not. I don't know if the listeners, well, of course I don't know all the listeners, but listeners that I know all of you. No, I don't. The listeners that have been to Europe would, in many parts of Europe, experience a profound sense of what feels like idleness or slowness, which is refreshing because the American way is, I want it now. I want it yesterday. It's been 2 hours and 5 minutes. Amazon said they'd have my delivery on my doorstep in 2 hours. WTF. Yep. So that literally, you're saying, has effects negatively upstream, even in the engineering departments of these different entities across the pond. So how does that impact patients and the technology itself?
It impacts patient, in my opinion, because it impacts their quality of treatment. It really does. I mean, think about something. In the age of evolution through decades, something that takes decades to refine is going to be a competitor product, I think that takes 16 months to do. I mean, there's always going to be glitches. I don't care if it's a computer or a recipe, right? There's always going to be something off in the beginning. Everything needs refinement. That's everything. A kid can write an essay. It needs editing. Nothing is perfect the first round. Nothing is perfect the second round. Everything can be refined. And when things are refined more, it's better. And again, going back to the basic, in Europe, where there's more resources from the government, they just have more help. You know, if I'm a European scientist and German scientist, we're doing the same study, but yet my government is giving me funding not only on from pharmacy, pharmaceutical company A, B, and C, but I'm also getting resources from Institut Pasteur that has a whole department on infusion studies. Okay, so now I have all their scientists and biochemists at hand, including the use of their vitamins. My study is going to come out a little more superior than yours because now I have different formulations that you're not going to have because you only have the resources to pharmaceutical company A, B, and C, and that's it.
How does that influence your view on the origin of different devices then? And furthermore, is it just, well, let me ask the first question, then I'll unpack the second one. How does that then impact your view on aesthetics equipment from the two continents?
It does influence a lot. That's what we do here. That's how we treat patients. And I'm always constantly on a daily battle with patients that want things yesterday. Why am I not seeing results? Why I need to see results by the minute I step out of here, to understanding the superiority of something that comes from a European philosophy. So, it's like, okay, what do I do? It's education. So one thing I do find, and it's still difficult, but one thing I do find is that we have to do a lot of patient education, a lot. So again, let's use another example, the cryoscan. It's European background, right? And it's a machine that has been refined many times. It's not a device that was made 12 months ago and put out on the market. And as we know, there are competitor machines that are very big names that spend a ton on marketing. So, and of course, every practice, and it doesn't have to be even like a fat dissolve machine. It could be other laser machines and whatnot. Patients have expectation. And whether it's realistic or not, their expectation is, I want to look like I had plastic surgery. And we know that's not going to happen. And unfortunately, something that comes from Europe also comes with the mentality that it takes multiple treatment. Not only does it take multiple treatment, the basis behind it makes sense because it's not plastic surgery. And I tell patients, I'm not opening you up. I mean, we offer smart lipo. By all means, sign up for smart lipo. And even that is not overnight. You're going to swell. The fat needs to kind of, have time to settle, and whatnot. So either that, or you do non-invasive, which is cryoscan. And we really have to get through the layers of fat. I mean, it just can't penetrate unless you want me to burn you. And guess what? There are competitor machines out there that do burn people, as you already know. Those are machines that are engineered in the US market. And why? Because they're engineered with the mentality, let's make this work now. Well, how does it work when you're using a cooling device to burn fat? It's got to have to burn through the top layer. I mean, you just can't penetrate at, temperatures that are not cold enough. So then what happens? You risk burning the top layer of your skin. And guess what? That's exactly what happened. So, but then again, we could explain that. I can explain that all day. I can talk about that all day with every single patient that comes in, and they'll understand it. Again, it's still a battle. Some will say, great, I understand. Let me sign up for it. 2 sessions later, how come I'm not skinny? So it's a problem because it's just how we're cultured here. And the same thing with skincare too. It's the same thing. I have this amazing, one of our thing is that we curate our medical grade skincare. We only sell medical grade skincare here. And one of the lines that we carry is from Barcelona. Amazing line that I'm completely obsessed with. Amazing technology that you don't find on any of the skincare here in the US. But guess what? One of their thing is that you can't just put three things on your face. You gotta let one absorb and then let it dry. Then you go on to put on the second one. Meanwhile, I have patients that's like, no, I have three kids. They have to get to school by a certain time. Give me one product. So again, it's a constant battle, but it's the best you could do is patient education.
How has that influenced the way you interface with new patients? Because a huge chunk of this is, well, two things come to mind. Number one is something to say about device selection and whether or not people should be or should not be dismissive of a device simply based on its origin. Because I can't imagine there's not a single fabulous device created in America or in Korea or whatever.
Mhm.
And the second is managing patient expectations and the art of doing so. So maybe you could
Mhm.
speak to either of those or both.
Well, first thing as practitioners, when you're picking devices, like I said, in the US, there's a ton of amazing device companies. I'm not saying that US engineered devices aren't good. As a matter of fact, like these laser machines that we have here, they're so amazing. It's a US based company, but if you really dig in, I mean, at the end of the day, what I find with a lot of problem, one of the main issues right now with doctors and practitioners is that they don't do enough research themselves. The sales rep comes in and they sell the device, sounds amazing, it does what I want to do, let me buy it. But then the problem is it filters through the doctor, and then they don't really know what it does and what the contraindications are. And then they sell the device, whatever the device does, okay, say laser, they sell it to the patient that might end up with thermal burns. And the
Hmm.
worst yet, and this is not in the case of cryoskin, but more of a laser device, is that on certain skin types, when you're pointing the laser, it looks fine. As a matter of fact, if you're trying to take out pigmentation, it does take it out. However, there's something called delayed thermal burns where they come out after the fact. And that's a lot of patients we treat. So a lot of practices have become so commercialized that they don't spend the time to do the research. So again, going back to like this company that we have the lasers from, if you do the research, you realize a lot of their devices are actually engineered in Israel. So it's an American company, but not American devices. So that's number one, very important to know. Number two, just because it's a device you don't know the name to, you haven't heard of it, doesn't mean it's not good. I mean, there are new technology out every year. As a matter of fact, every few months. You're not going to know everything. The best and smartest person is not going to know everything, not in the world of medicine. It's advancing every single day. And this is why we're always at some sort of medical conference, because there's always something to learn. So just because it's something you've never heard, again, you got to dive in. You've got to do your own studies. Ask for clinical studies. Look what it's done in the past. What have they done with this machine? What kind of adverse effects it has? Um, and the other thing is there are companies out there that put a lot of money into marketing. So of course there are household names for certain things. Again, the competitor of Cryoskin, it's household name. And the salesperson, they're going to be knocking on your door every other day. So they're going to hound you and you're like, okay, maybe that's the machine I should get. Again, do your own research, see what it does, ask why, every why possible, and then look at the other machines. Just because, let me use Cryoskin as an example. You've never heard of Cryoskin. What is it? I've never heard of it. I've never even seen anybody use it. Doesn't mean it's inferior. You just have to do the research. Why is nobody using it? Maybe because nobody knows, because maybe the rep from the other machine company is knocking on everybody's door every day. And that's okay. That's their job. But again, you have to do your own research, because at the end of the day, it's your practice that will benefit. Once you do your research, you get the proper things, you in turn will sell it properly to your patients.
Pro tip from a sales guy, AKA me, to the listeners: you should run for the hills if you have somebody knocking on your door every day trying to sell you something. You should lock your doors and run, because that is slightly terrifying and extremely
I have laser
incorrect.
reps at my door
Oh
every
my
single
gosh.
day.
Hey, do you want to buy yet? Hey, do you want? No, I've told you 30 times in the last 5
Oh
minutes.
my
Bug
God, that
off.
sounds like the story of my life.
Yeah. Well, you can't blame them. There's a lot of bad sales education out there.
Oh yeah, totally. No, I agree. And at the end of the day, I do feel bad. It is their job, except that I'm like, I did tell you I'm not ready. I did tell you we just bought 3 lasers. I'm like, I'm not ready for a long while, so you
Yeah.
don't have to talk to me.
Well, are you sure? You didn't tell me all of but 4 minutes ago. Yeah, I'm sure. Okay, lose my number. Anyway, sidebar. Well, so how do you then approach device research? How is that done correctly? And what do you look for? Because again, one of the things that I found fascinating, I don't have the research in front of me, it's on my shelf over here, but there's a piece, I found it on the NCBI NIH website, and it was an article doing a review on non-invasive body contouring. And one of the introductory paragraphs were saying, or making claims that are, resolutely obvious, I think, in my eyes, that the majority of these companies come out and they make these grandiose claims. But the more you dig into the literature, the more you realize that the marketing department is taking data, oftentimes skewing it to make it look better. And then when you look at the source of the study, we see a 39% subcutaneous adipose tissue reduction. Like, great, let's see the data. Oh yeah, sorry, we did it on Vietnamese pigs.
Right. Well, one thing that is really important that I have found that people don't know how to differentiate is that, and this is both for devices and even medical grade skincare products or medical grade any kind of products, is that if I'm selling you this here, okay, this is my brand, let's call it brand XYZ. And what is this? This is vitamin B12. And let's say I'm making the claim that vitamin B12, and totally, this is totally made up, okay? It cures COVID. Let's call it that, all right? So I'm in your office now telling you this cures COVID and that you should stock up on this. I'm going to sell you 12 vials per case pack, all right? You asked me for a clinical study. Okay, so that's always what I always ask first, because clinical study are studies that are really regulated. It comes with certain guidelines when they run the study. It's not a study that I decide to do in my office. It's not like, say, oh, Mina's going to run a study, so she's going to do it on 15 patient and put a report out. That's not real clinical study. So real clinical studies have guidelines and things that they have to adhere to. So when they can present you with a clinical study, that's when you know that whatever the clinical study is showing and presenting, it's something legit. Now, 2 things to look out for though. One thing is that I may say I have a clinical study for that, but my clinical study that I give you will say how B12 cures COVID. But here's the catch. I didn't say XYZ B12 cures COVID. I just said there's a clinical study. I could have pulled that off the web that someone in Indonesia or France or Chicago did that says B12 and their brand might be ABC, not my brand. I could have put cranberry juice in this and told you that this is my B12 and this cures COVID. Do you see where the disconnect is? So you have to make sure the clinical study specifically states that this specific product is doing what it claims to do. So, I guess a lot of the listeners might know certain medical grade skincare products. So I'll use one that a lot of people know, that is by Allergan, who's made the maker of Botox. They have a skincare line called Skin Medica. They have this amazing product called TNS. It's a growth factor. Without me getting into what it is or whatever, it's expensive, and it's because it's growth factor. So they have clinical studies, lots of them, to back it up. And if you look at their clinical studies, specifically, not only does this growth factor does what it claims to do, but it's the Skin Medica TNS growth factor. So I know this study was done with that product and not with just growth factor. So, when I was looking into certain devices, for example, say fat loss, and they give me a clinical study that says muscle stimulation, blah, 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 results in 25 to 40% fat loss in as little as 3 sessions, and here's the clinical study. Well, duh, I know that. I'm talking about your machine. How do I know if your machine works? This study just shows me that this engineering will result in that. But is this engineering in your machine? I don't know. And if you've never ran a study with your specific machine, don't come to me, because I am not going to buy it and sell it to my patient and risk that it doesn't have that 25 to 40% fat loss. You understand what I'm saying? So that's one of the very, very big thing that I realize almost no one really catches onto. And then they'll be like, oh, okay, there's a clinical study. Great. As a matter of fact, that happened recently. There was a stem cell company that tried to come to us to tell us to buy stem cells. And stem cells are great, whether it's for like joint injections or even facials, microneedling. And I kept asking about clinical studies. So it really happened to me. And all they kept giving me were clinical studies on how stem cells really help rejuvenate or grow damaged joints in the body. And I kept telling them, I know that. I need clinical studies on your stem cells. So after asking maybe 5 or 6 times, they finally had to say, well, we didn't have the funds to run the study. So all I could tell you is that, as you can see, it does work. But I'm like, well, I didn't need to see that. I know that it works. I need to know, before spending thousands on your stem cells, that your stem cell work, because all I know is that you could have put shampoo. I mean, I didn't say that, but they could have put shampoo in a vial and call it stem cells.
In latest news, Mina, the latest clinical breakthrough is water is wet. Oh my God, revelatory. So I think the bullet point summary here is something like, number one, I don't know if you've heard of Fermi's paradox, which just asks the question, if there's life out there in the universe, where is it? And the answer is something to the effect of, well, there's a great filter every civilization passes through. And then if they don't get through it, well, then they don't get through it. So the great filter here, point being, this is a bit of a reach, admittedly, but the great filter for, should I even entertain talking to one of the clowns knocking on my door endlessly every 5 minutes trying to sell me something, is, do you have clinical data? And it's binary. If no, adios. If so, let's talk. That's the starting point. The second piece, unless there's anything else there, I think the second piece is what I just learned from you, which is to say, you need to hunt for the correlate, the correlation. It's not enough to say, coming back to the silly joke of water is wet. Like, yeah, I know water's wet. How do I know your product makes water wetter, or whatever the joke would be? So,
and it's really unfortunate. You don't think that there are people that are dishonest out there, but it's really, really unfortunate that we do live in a world that there are people that will do things for the sake of money. And we would like to think that there aren't, but there are just people out there,
Well, it's certainly within humans' proclivity or nature is to deceive, con, and thus, to me, the antidote is you should always trust, but caveat being verify. Trust, but verify. So how do you, this might seem like an obvious question. I don't know if there's really any
Let's
insight
do.
here, because on the one hand, it's like you just do it, but how do you then go about, if the key point in this is finding the correlation, aka the chain between the outcomes that are claimed, 40, 50, 1,000,000% fat reduction, and the devices in this case influence on achieving that cause, or rather the effect. How do you then look through and comb through the data? Is there a way that you do it rather, to where you can quickly say, oh, okay, I see the correlation here, the device does do what they claim?
Well, I may not be the perfect person for you to ask because I am a medical journal nerd. So I love these sort of journals and studies just for fun. Is just, I find that I learn so much from it. It's like sitting in a med school class almost. So
Hmm.
I read it anyway and I digest and I don't understand it. And trust me, some of them are in foreign language.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, I read this one that's about plasma, and I'm just like, oh my God, I should have paid attention in fifth grade chemistry class because I have no idea what it's saying.
Yeah.
But I read it again and I read it again and I read it with a medical dictionary next to me. I am such a nerd when it comes to that. But for not everybody is like me. I understand that. As a matter of fact, probably nobody is like me. And it's it's time. It takes time. It does take time. There's no easier way. There's no shortcut or cliff note version where, okay, well, this claims what it does, let me take a look. And there's not even an index for them to just let me jump to that part. You just really have to read through, and sometimes it's very tedious. Sometimes it's studies after studies after studies. And you know what, there's a rep, and that's what they're for. That's their job. They're annoying, but that's their job. You read it, you don't understand something, call the rep. Now, granted, keep in the back of your head, they're trying to sell. So I wouldn't be asking them for their opinion on anything, but to clarify, I would be asking the rep. Okay. So they're at your disposal. Um, it takes time. This is why, like I said, the commercialization of a lot of practices nowadays, they don't want to go through all that. Doctors don't have time. Practice owners, nurses, whoever it is, they just don't have time, or patients, or people don't want to read through clinical studies. It's not fun for people that don't care about it. I mean, they're tiny little words with no pictures. And if there is a picture, it's probably like a skin biopsy of like something that doesn't even look like anything. And it's page after page after page. The words are so tiny, you probably need a magnifying glass. Nobody wants to read it. And this is why they don't dive in. They take what the rep says and that's it. And they try to sell it because it's a very expensive machine. They need to make their money back. It's as easy as that. One of the advice I can give you, or anyone that's listening, is that ask the rep to, if things get confusing and you need clarification, you can always ask the rep to set up something. And every company has this, they just probably refer it differently, a reference call where they can connect you with another provider, whether it's a doctor or, depending on what it is that you're buying, another account that's using the product, because at least there's user feedback that way. And I guarantee you, every company has that, where they can set you up, that you can talk to them. Because not only now are you have the clinical studies in front of you, but you're now getting real user feedback, experience, even feedback on how great of a support the company is, because a lot of times these devices are not easy to use, much less they're not cheap. So it's an investment. You want to know their support. You don't want to invest in $100,000 machine and be like, well, I don't know what this error message is and I don't know where to go from here because I don't know who to call. So it's always important. As a matter of fact, even if you have no questions, I always say just ask for a reference call, just to
Yeah.
talk to somebody.
I think it's also important to, as you're building and scaling up your practice, if you do not have access to an MD as you do, and perhaps you're just starting out, maybe you're operating out of a salon suite or something of the sort, you don't have the resources to, social capital, that is to say, to just call up Dr. XYZ. I think the listeners would be behooved to create a board of advisors, so to speak, that's such that they can tap into and ask, hey, what do you think about this? Give me your honest feedback, because I'm with you on the reference call idea. However, I would be somewhat leery to just take the feedback from the reps contact because of incentives. So I guess perhaps maybe this is the heuristic for listeners. And this applies to both reference calls, this applies to reviews, this applies to talking and dealing with reps, which, a lot of sales reps are great. The majority have tragic training and they're just pushy and the rest of it. But if the individual you're talking to is not willing to say, yeah, our device is not perfect for everybody, or it doesn't do this, or, in other words, if they're speaking to Rosie or Rosalie, which is probably not a word, then you probably should run for the hills, because every piece of equipment has some sort of drawback, catch, con, or whatever, not con in the pejorative sense. And if the individual's not willing to disclose that, that should arouse suspicion, if it were me at least. Yeah.
Right. And then look, worst case scenario, this is something that I would not be afraid of doing, is Google. Find in this country, there's got to be somebody with the device that you're looking at, or whatever it is that you're looking at. Call them. Look, if it was me and somebody cold call me and say, I am a provider in, I don't know, Arizona, I'm looking into getting this or that, I just want your feedback. As a community in the medical world, I'm happy to call them back or have a conversation with them. As a matter of fact, that has happened to me. Somebody DM'd me on Instagram, asked me my opinion on this really amazing, great new machine that's out there. I'm happy to give feedback, because you know what it is, the world's round, and I believe, what goes around comes around. And I had wish when I was looking at machines, I had somebody like that to help me. So Google if you have to, and see who has the device and call them. What's the worst that could happen? They'll be like, no, I'm sorry, I don't have time to talk to you. Right?
Yeah.
And then at that point, that's a definitely unbiased opinion.
Right. Exactly. And that I would advocate for, even over a suggested reference call from rep, because a lot of these reps, they have shoo-ins with providers and they get a kickback if they speak positively about the product. And so I think Mina, your point there is dead on. You should turn to our trusty friend Google or DuckDuckGo if you're like me, brave, and just call and ask. But I'm scared. Guess what, listeners? Fear is an interest paid on a debt you may not owe.
No, this is how you make a lot of friends, because a lot of times I end up keeping in touch with these people, whether they're the one that approached me or I approach them, and we end up exchanging techniques or, whatever it is that we were talking about. And it's fantastic, because they're constantly treating patients. I'm constantly treating patients, and we're all coming across different things. No one's alike in terms of their body or their skin. I mean, even something as simple as Botox, we're constantly coming across something. And to have a roundtable forum of people that that you can constantly exchange information with, I mean, that's priceless. And that's how you grow with, the advancement of technology and everything nowadays.
Yeah, 100%. Well, I know we have the hour blocked out, so I want to make sure that we can get through a set of rapid fire type questions. So I've got a few questions here prepped that I'd love to get your feedback on, and then we'll close out the show on the other side of that. So the first rapid fire question for you is, what resources, publications, magazines, influencers, whatever, would you suggest the listeners follow?
Well, I have JDD bookmark, which is
JDD.
a journal of dermatology.
Okay.
I mean, I am in aesthetics medicine, so because skin restoration is a big thing that we do here. I mean, of course we do more than that, but that is one of my passions. So like I said, I'm bored, I'm pulling up some random medical journal from there to read. There's not specific anything per se that anyone should need to subscribe to, because I think providers of in any arena need to have a big understanding, a broad understanding of things. So I would say one thing, instead of journals and magazines, is to attend conferences. Because not only are you receiving information, but you're exchanging information and you're meeting contact, like what I was saying about, some contacts you keep in contact with, you become friends with them, and you're constantly evolving with each other.
What particular events would you suggest listeners go to?
Frozen.
Oh, there we go. Okay, and we're back.
Okay, you're back.
Yeah. So, what particular conferences, events, trade shows, etc., would you suggest listeners attend?
Again, depending on what your arena medicine is. I mean, for me, we attend the plastic surgery show in Miami. It happens once a year, every year. Believe it or not, okay, so we buy our devices from one of the big laser companies called Ulma. Like I said, they're an American company, but they're actually based, their main headquarters is based out of Israel. One thing I really love about them is because their web of experts are world renowned, and they host these conferences. And you're right, at the end of the day, they're trying to sell machines. But to have these world renowned doctors talk at these conferences, which they call the Business of Beauty, it's crazy. I mean, like, I would attend the same Business of Beauty at 2 different states, and my takeaway are different every single time. So even if it's
Mina, I think we lost your audio.
You hear me? My Wi-Fi is fine. I think, say something? No.
Okay, let's try that. That might.
Oh, I could hear you now.
Okay, there we go. Oh, technology and the internet. Okay. All right. Anyway, you were saying.
Okay. So I was saying, where did I get cut off? Do you know? Or should I just? I was talking about Alma, the laser company device.
Yeah, the experts learning something, business of beauty.
Yeah. Do you think that got on? Okay.
I think it drops. I think it drops.
Okay, so I'll just repeat that part.
Okay.
So one of the device companies that we buy our devices company from, they're actually one of the biggest laser companies. Well, one of the bigger device companies in the US. They're Ulma. They're called Ulma, and they host these conferences. And yes, like you said, at the end of the day, they are trying to sell devices. However, their web of experts that they have talking at these conferences are one of the most amazing people I've ever met. These are world-renowned doctors, practitioners. There's a laser expert, and they're not really talking. I mean, yeah, some of their topics are very device driven. So yes, they're talking about a specific device that they are trying to sell, but at the same time, they do take deep dives into skin types and how to treat, how to prevent adverse events. So I could go to 2, and they're called Business of Beauty. I could go to 2 different Business of Beauties, which are the exact same thing with the same topics, even if it's the same experts that's talking. My takeaway is different every time, because these doctors are just so, I mean, these are doctors on different level. So my point is, if practitioners have access to these things, a rep trying to get you to buy something and is inviting you to their symposia or some sort of conference, ask for information. Who's talking? What kind of people are talking? How many experts do you have? And if it's, what kind of topics are you guys talking about? if those seems like things that you can take away from, I would attend. A lot of times the rep would actually invite you to go because at the end of the day, again, they're trying to sell a machine.
What they should be trying to do is solve a problem or lose your number if they can't solve one of your problems instead of trying to sell you something. Right. Nobody wants to be sold. They want to buy. They don't want to be sold.
Right.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks for sharing that. Question 2, what product or service has been the most profitable for you?
What product or service? Well, I would say anything with no consumables. So, like the cryo scan, because there's no the consumables, the gel, which is nothing. We do injectables, so like Botox and fillers and they do cost us a lot to purchase. There's a big thing where people are like, oh, you make so much money off of Botox. We make no money off of Botox, as a matter of fact, because it is so expensive to buy. So to us, those are consumables. Or, if there's a device, each patient, we have to change a tip to, those are called consumables. Yeah, I mean, we'll make money, of course, but of course the best things are things that have no consumables. Facials, not so much. I mean, we use medical grade skincare products. So, I mean, each facial costs us pretty much an arm and a leg just in products. So.
Wow. So anything without consumables, Botox is on the bottom of that list, and then other devices, treatments without.
Skin is one of the top ones. Certain laser procedures that we do are on the top as well. Again, no consumable. So.
Yeah. Cool. Question 3, is there any contrarian, continue with the contrarian theme, which is, I think, in your DNA, which is a good thing. It's great. It's great quality. Is there any contrarian advice, or rather, what contrarian advice that you implemented or have deployed would you give the listener? Is there anything that comes to mind that's a contrarian bit of advice?
No, I can't think of any, actually.
Fair enough. Well, here's the last one, and then actually I lied. There's one more on the other side of this, but as a fun exit here, because you are, let me actually quote this here from your bio. I found this fascinating that you were on the yearly standing of the NYT's best dressed feature. So what style advice would you have for the listeners, if any?
Be yourself and don't follow trends. Be comfortable. You're in a clinic. You're running around all day seeing patients. I mean, I'm in 5-inch heels every day, but I'm comfortable. I can run in it. If you're not comfortable in 5-inch heels, don't show up to work in it.
Be you. Everyone else is already taken. Hashtag Oscar Wilde. Oscar Wilde. Well, very cool. Well, Mina, I've enjoyed our time. I know we've had some fun tech issues. I'm going to have to get on the phone with Comcast and raise some hell for my internet being a nightmare today. Apologies about that. But as a closing note, where can the listeners connect with you if they want to fall into your orbit?
Well, we have an amazing Instagram page with lots and lots of information. Again, like I said, patient education is key. So we actually post everything we do on there, from, actually showcasing the procedures to informations to things we do. On Instagram, we are Lueur_MD_aesthetics.
And I'll spell that for the listeners because that is, again, French. So it is LUEUR_MD_aesthetics with an A. So AESTHETICS. Awesome.
Thank you.
Well, Mina, you are a rock star, and you're definitely better dressed than me. So kudos to you. We're looking forward to your style book, which I hope you are writing because we need to read it.
It'll be on your coffee table by next year.
Beautiful. Well, Mina, I've enjoyed the conversation, and we'll have to have you on again here soon.
Thank you so much.
Awesome. You take care.
Thank you. Talk to you soon.
Okay. Bye-bye.